Welcome to The Rest is Giant Robots, a conversation through the careers of writer Simon Furman and artist Andrew Wildman. Recollections and revelations about the highs and the lows as creatives in comics, books, games, film and TV.
Hello everyone, welcome to The Rest is Giant Robots, our amazing anniversary 50th issue. And we are joined by two special guests. Oh, sorry, Andrew, I haven't let you introduce yourself.
We haven't said who you are yet, have
you? Say hello, Andrew.
Hello, Andrew.
Yes, we are joined by two very special guests, and they're going to introduce themselves. And yeah, this is just our celebratory 50th issue, and thank you for joining us and staying with us all this time. James, over to you.
Oh, right. I haven't prepared this. So, yeah, James Roberts, long-time listener and fan, first-time caller. You may know me from such things as Last Stand of the Wreckers with our other guest, and More Than Meets the Eye, and various other bits and bobs over the years.
And
Nick?
I, because this is an anniversary issue and there must be a double-sided cover, I am the back cover, James being the front. Turn James around and you will always find me. No, hang on. No, I am called Nick Roche. I am a writer, artist and fan of Transformers.
So you're called Nick Roche, but what's your actual name?
yeah.
Well, the Patreon subscribers will find my PPS number and details, and will get a chance to enter a competition to do some identity theft later on.
Okay, excellent. Right, so what are we going to do with these beautiful guests of ours?
Oh,
You know, let's go back to the start. We're going to take a little back seat a bit in this and shine the spotlight on our guests and ask them, first of all, in whichever order you care to do it, what was your first experience of Transformers? What was that moment where you discovered there was this thing called Transformers? Was it a toy, a comic, the TV show? And at what point did you sort of get to the comic version?
Nick, I think you should go first because although I am older than you, you beat me to it. You got onto them first.
Yeah, well, kind of. Yeah, I first heard of Transformers when I was asked to write Last Stand of the Wreckers. I first saw Transformers. I think it was whatever the TV ads were that were first on UK TV. So if that was in 84, it would be in 84, but I think it may be in 85 when they started being shown the TV ads. And it was the idea of just, because it had the theme tune, it had the toys, it had the stentorian tones of from Hasbro, the man just like being so urgent about the Porsche turns into a robot. It was like the Porsche does turn into a robot. And so that kind of got me because I was 4 or 5, I would have been 5. I like toy cars, and I've said it in lots of interviews, I always liked nearly every TV show at the time that had a main character that was a vehicle. So like Knight Rider or Street Hawk or Airwolf or even the A-Team where the car was a star, or even Starsky and Hutch. So, and this was a property where the vehicles were the characters. So it was that idea of seeing the toys on the advert, and there's a bit of animation in those ads as well. So that really got me. The theme tune. So that was it. Then I saw the cartoon in 85, late 85, happened to be watching it in the summer holidays, and I saw the very first episode. And that was when I became a fan, to be honest, really, because there was story and lore behind it. I didn't know what an Autobot or a Decepticon was until I saw that first episode. And, you know, having rewatched those episodes recently with my own kids, I can sort of see why it took hold of me. Do you know what I mean? Those first few episodes really are a cut above and most other TV shows of the time, or animated TV shows, but definitely a cut above what came after cartoon-wise for Transformers. So that would have been it. And then I discovered the comics in school, I guess, the following year. And I knew that there was Transformers comics existed because I saw them being passed around. And then the first copy I took home was from a kid in my class, issue 79, the first part of 2006. And then the first issue I bought was a few issues later, issue 83, and that was it. Then really, it was just the right wrong time to come on board. It was the movie year. I was, quite happy to see Optimus Prime and Megatron be sidelined for the new leaders. So, and that was it. And like the it was definitely hitting an imperial phase. The comic was, I think I'm sure you guys have spoken about it, but James and I definitely have. Like that, 86 seems to be where the confidence is really being seen in the comic, where it's charting its own destiny. And that was so your fault, really, I guess, Simon, as well. Yeah.
I forgot the first rule of doing a podcast with Nick is that don't let him go first. There's a little overlap in that. So I was late to the party, and I always thought I had a very well-rounded childhood with friends and access to popular culture, but I can't explain why, given all the marketing money behind it. Transformers didn't. I don't remember them getting through to me in '84, which was odd. I do remember watching the first episode, like Nick. I mean, literally the same time.
That's cool, isn't it? Knowing where we both were at the same time.
Yeah. Which would have been Whack-A-Day or whatever that ITV breakfast thing was. And I remember when the 4 million years later caption came on screen, and that made me think, that blew my mind as a 8-year-old or something. I thought, couldn't conceive of that amount of time being built into the story. But it wasn't enough. I didn't go out and get the toys then. I didn't get the comic. It wasn't until a friend of my brother's had issue 96. So that was part 1 of Prey. And that epic final page, that splash page where you've got Optimus Prime's apparent remains, dismembered and so on, Jeff Anderson's artwork. And that was incredible. So I borrowed a couple of other issues, but it wasn't until issue 113 and the beginning of Wanted, Galvatron, Dead or Alive. So again, that's kind of a sequel to the movie. That's what really hooked me into the comics. And then in between those things, I got Blitzwing as a present for my 10th birthday, and I went to see the movie, which I think we'll talk about later on. So that was me.
And did you consider yourselves fans? I mean, Nick kind of answered this already, but did you consider yourself a Transformers fan at this point, or did that come later?
I did, yeah. I mean, I hadn't really been a fan of much. Again, looking back, I mean, I was into Lego, but Transformers was the first thing I felt, I kind of pledged fealty to, and it was weird because I noticed as we went into '87, you could kind of the temperature was starting to go out of it a little bit. The comic was still great, the toys were still selling well, but I'd become a fan just past its peak, if you know what I mean, commercially.
I've been to parties where James has shown up late, and that's kind of a sign that the party's over. So.
What's the Irish goodbye? You invented that, you lot.
It's the currency hello. It's like, I definitely was. I definitely knew what fandom, what it was to be a fan. My first thing was snooker. And then it was Knight Rider, and then it was that sort of kind of thing of when you. I mean. What do you mean, James? Sorry,
just the snooker gateway drug. I mean, we've all been there, right?
Hey, look at there's a lot of diagnoses weren't available in the mid-80s, but it was that all-consuming sort of thing. I wanted to be a snooker player. I knew I couldn't be Knight Rider, but I really wanted my dad to be Michael Knight, and it was that same thing of I couldn't stop thinking about something, and that's how it definitely was with Transformers once I started being aware of the fiction of it. And my way of relating to something, and as James's would have been ultimately too, is to make stories about those things. So I would have been drawing little Knight Rider storybooks and Herbie storybooks, less so snooker fanfic, though I did like to draw lots of... That would come later with me. Me and James would write one later, legitimately. I definitely would start. So I started making. He-Man I would have been making little storybooks, comics about He-Man before Transformers, and then once Transformers came in, I literally have, I think, one of those copybooks where the first story in it that I did, I still have it, is a Masters of the Universe story, and then I literally stopped that story, and the next page is a Transformers story, and I'm pretty sure I didn't go back to doing He-Man. Until 6 weeks ago when I started drawing He-Man for Dark Horse.
Oh, he's getting the plugs in already. No, very good. But that's a good definition actually, is of really becoming a certain type of fan, a fan that produces, even if it's unofficial. I started writing fanfic. I didn't conceive of it as that at the time, but I started writing fanfic when I was at primary school still. The school jotter was just the right place to do it.
And you drew as well, though, at that time, didn't you?
Yeah, well, how at school, particularly at primary school, the artists are identified early on, right? And it's you're a good drawer. Yeah. And then how do you draw, right? And I was one of those. But then, again, as Nick will know, the weaker artists fall away pretty fast, right? And I fell away, and the Nicks of the world just keep on going, But you kind of, and you abandon that talent, that once talent. You focus on something else you're good at. So I was good up to a point, and as we'll talk, I guess, a little bit about fanzines later on, and there are some examples of my stuff, but just it was nothing compared to the real artists out there.
Yeah, but at the same time, like you were still making stories with art from a young age, and that is like that does inform like you know.
Yeah,
you have a very visual sort of sense. Like you have a very clear idea when you write your story, how you want them to look and how you want them staged and stuff. So I think
I've certainly still got somewhere sketchbooks. I used to copy the panels I liked from the comic, and so I've got I've copied Andrew's artwork, and Jeff's and some others as well. They're still around, but they'd be the inspiration. So yeah.
I mean, I used to fill exercise books with story on one side and a sort of full page illustration on the. I use that word lightly, but
I'd love to see them though.
If only I still had them.
You don't think any of them survive at all? No, they're all
no. They all got thrown out. God, there's so much. I wish I had.
I know.
Yeah.
Still, but yeah, I mean, it was. I wasn't a bad copy artist. I could look at another picture and copy it quite well. I wasn't an original artist, though. So I used to just draw Action Man's face onto other figures I was copying from something else.
Fair enough. I mean, that's how any of us, I'm sure you're the same, Nick. We started off by copying other people's stuff. I mean, I've said that. I even trace my earliest memories of drawing were tracing things. And I think what that does is you're almost building up the muscle memory of how lines work.
Yeah.
And all of that goes in, and then eventually, if you're tracing, you take the thing away. It's like taking the stabilizers off the bike, and you find that you can actually begin to do that yourself.
Yeah. You've learned to kind of observe kind of how the things are kind of built and put together. Do you think you've got any of your like school stuff, Andrew? Do you think you got any of your childhood?
Yeah, I mean, it was copied stuff, but I used to do illustrations on the back of my school exercise books.
Yeah.
And some people are just like, well, what's Wildman done? What's the latest one you done?
Yeah. My daughter's just about to start secondary school. We had a meeting with the school the other day. Like all the parents had to go up there, and they're talking about the textbooks and how, you're not they're to be passed on to the next year, so you can't write or draw on them. And I literally turned to my wife and said, but how are they going to draw Death's Head 2? Where will they draw him?
You put your hand up in the hall.
Yeah. It's like, these are missing a big sort of like, that was my thing once I was in secondary school. It was just because like he's the most metal looking, attitude laden looking character. So like every history book, geography book just had like Death's Head 2.
They're out there now.
He's not
in
your
circulation.
Death's Head. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But Nick, you also, Dory, just going to say, Nick he's kind of underselling the amount of content you produce as a kid. So you filled dozens.
I had like my own like. Well, my imprint was because like Marvel obviously had the kind of the market cornered in like sort of self promotion with a name like Marvel. So my imprint was called Excellent Comics. That was how I learned how to spell the word excellent. So excellent.
So the ego was there right from the start.
Look, I was told I was a very special boy, Simon. And Excellent Comics, the Excellent Verse, doesn't get mentioned in the same way as IDW and Marvel, does it? But the Excellent Transformers series lasted for about 100, I think it was 113, 114 issues. And I drew it from, I was the age of like 6 or 7 up to like I was in secondary school. And then I kind of, that was all in copybooks, all numbered. And then I kind of started drawing, like looking to draw, because Transformers comics had been finished a couple of years by then. But I was still drawing them up until G2 had come out, because I was definitely drawing like neck veins or neck wires and kind of like robo crucifixion. And I guess to talk about my kids, like this is a round robin at Christmas. But my little boy, who's 10, just showed me a picture of G2 Sideswipe he drew the other day in school. And it's all like spiky wheels and like big wires on the neck and stuff. And
go Daniel.
I know. It's so true. So so it is funny seeing that. But I did kind of keep it going. And then by then X-Men had come along, and I kind of Transformers was kind of done. And by then I kind of knew I definitely wanted to be a comic book artist and wanted to do this. And I kind of knew, I figured I needed to start drawing people. So because it looked like the career for drawing robots was dwindling even more than it has now. So
I know Simon had a question, but I'm going to jump in very quickly on the back of something Andrew said about Andrew and Nick as artists, and it's kind of a rite of passage. You'll start, both of you, and you'll start off, copying or being influenced by other art, which it makes perfect sense. And I know I've said this elsewhere, but it always fascinates me, the difference of attitude towards art and fan fiction. Whereas it's, as I've said, it's kind of normal for, you can draw a Spider-Man or Wolverine or something, and that's appreciated for what it is. But if you cut your teeth in fiction using pre-existing characters, even new combinations, new takes, whatever, it's, for a long time, or at least it was kind of looked down upon. So that's my preemptive defensive fanfic.
No, it's true though, isn't it? And but the stuff I was writing, quote unquote, then was it was very reheated stuff that from the Marvel comic. Do you know what I mean? It was basically I was a cover band essentially. And that's how you learn the tunes, I guess. So
but you look at something like
I mean, comics and all that kind of stuff were not taken in any way seriously in the UK. I mean, are they now? I mean, to a degree they are, I suppose, but we don't have the whole kind of ninth art cultural descriptions and all that kind of thing.
Because I was doing a workshop with kids the other day, and part of me almost thinks that there was a moment maybe when comics almost were but now it's been superseded by manga. So it's kind of, and it's great. I mean, because essentially kids are still reading sequential art, and it's brilliant to see. But when I was doing a head count in the classroom about who reads comics and who reads manga and stuff, it was, and they all had their mangas, their little pocket digests with them. So I think there is going to hopefully be a tradition of people who are inspired to make, but it does feel that the manga footprint at the moment seems very, very strong. But
maybe. I mean, when I was at art college, I mean, I studied graphic design, but specialised in illustration. But the only reason I ever went to art school at all is because I wanted to draw comics. So hard as I might to do different ways of illustrating, I could never paint, all those kind of things. Yeah. So every brief we were given, I did it in a comic book style, and the tutors were great in a way. They kind of encouraged me, and they taught me how to use different kind of materials to achieve those things with, dip pens and brushes and all that kind of stuff.
Stuff you wouldn't have tried otherwise, Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Because when you're a kid and you're aping comics, you're doing it with felt tip pens and whatever you can get your hands on. Yeah. Well, it's gone full circle. I mean, people do now, don't they? But when we had the degree show, my stuff was all up, and I'd done. I mean, the briefs were do some illustrations from the book Shardik by Richard Adams, and I had this huge kind of poster that I'd done with all these characters sitting around a table and whatever, but it was all line and color essentially. Yeah. And so the internal assessors, which sounds a bit medical, but they looked at the stuff and they took it for what it was. But when the external assessors came from big design companies in London, they came to give their part of the mark for the degree. And there was a guy from one of these London design agencies called, Tomato, whatever, Atomic Giraffe, whatever they called themselves in those days.
Great portfolio.
Well, he just looked at my stuff and he said, "Why are you wasting your time with this subculture?" And that was it. That's all he said. Wow. And he was gone.
From the noble business of marketing.
Yes.
But you're either going to go one way or the other in an instance like that, and I'm sure we all have examples where you either.
Yeah, similarly, I because there's no way to study comics in the 90s when I was finished secondary school, and I wanted to make comics. Just all I wanted to do, and we had some really good animation courses over in Ireland, and we still do. In college, I was told, or when I was applying to college, I was told that you can come and study animation, but you have to give up drawing comics. And instead of thinking, well, I'd just come and learn animation skills and become a much better artist and learn storytelling and, learn anatomy and figure drawing and use that for comics or go into animation and earn a living, I decided not to go to college and just kind of remain self-taught. And it worked out fine, but it's a shame. I didn't realize I had the autonomy to do my own thing if I stuck to my guns,
Yeah.
You get told, like you say, you get told something at a certain time, and it can be the thing that kind of sends you one direction or the other, doesn't it? So
I think that's the thing with being an artist, though, isn't it? For pretty much any other pursuit in a creative, I'll broaden that out for creative, but any other thing people do in life, you need to get some kind of training for it. But you can choose to either get some training as a writer, artist, filmmaker, whatever, or you can go on that journey on your on your own. So
Yeah. I mean, I used to sort of review a lot of portfolios of art from kind of up and coming wannabe creators, and it got to the point where I could tell within a page or two of a portfolio whether they had what it took,
Yeah,
because you
kind
could
of can,
see,
I think.
yeah, you could just see the ones who, okay, it might have been raw and unrefined, but you could see they had the visual arsenal necessary to put together a comics page.
Yeah.
Where you might get asked to draw anything, from a horse to a transforming vehicle. It's, and my acid test was always, can you draw a horse?
That was, I think that was in. I did the Mail Away Kubert School course for a while in the 90s, and so I say I was self-taught, but obviously I was doing things like that and trying to absorb what I could. But when the first assignment in that is to draw like a cowboy scene, because obviously they especially the artists who were like Joe Kubert as well, but like a lot of the tutors, they were of that era of like where the westerns were what they wanted to be drawn. They didn't want to be drawn superheroes. So Jose Delbo was a similar sort of kind of guy. But I met Emma Kubert last year, who is Joe Kubert's granddaughter, and she so when after you send an assignment, it would come back and there'd be like a draw over, there'd be like greaseproof tracing paper, and it would have like corrections on it and notes.
wow.
And I mentioned this to Emma or whatever, and she was saying, my granddad, he was the one doing those. So I was like, what? She's like, yeah, the Joe Kubert would have sent you that himself, and it wasn't signed or anything like that. So I've got like a little draw over one of my drawings of him kind of correcting some of my anatomy and repairing my horse, and having a handwritten note about saying, do more of this, do less of this and stuff. But going back to what you're saying, Simon, about the portfolio reviews, you can tell that the people who have a bit of nous about them and who have that spark are always the ones that you can kind of give the harsher criticism for, because they're there for that. They're not there to be told that you are good at drawing. They're there to be told this needs work, so you can do the work, so you can make the next step. And
but this is where there is an interesting distinction between the art and the writing, because it is harder at a glance to. You can't at a glance determine whether you're looking at the work of a competent writer or whatever, whether it's comic scripts or prose. I mean, you need a larger sample, obviously, but I mean, whereas artistically, as you said, almost instinctively, you can tell, okay, there's something to work with here.
But it was so hard when, like, at the beginning of like your work in comics, James, when like I knew that like this is who you want to have doing the work, and I'm trying to get like your stuff across people's offices, and editors just don't have time to, read like writing samples, that doesn't come with a pre-published comic and stuff. And it was just like there were so many, and even though they'd promised to read it or check it out, it's kind of like it was clear that they hadn't, because otherwise they would have been on the phone to you before then, So it's kind of
I mean, and it was also, it was obviously the age of the internet, but it wasn't as fully fledged a kind of digital comics universe as there is now. Nowadays we've all been asked it, I'm sure, and you would encourage aspiring creators to say, just get your work out there, get it, true, circulate it online. If you're not an artist, then find an artist to work with you and just, put it out there. But the noughties is a little trickier to do that.
Yeah.
There's massive, I've said this many times before in panels and stuff, but there's huge advantage and disadvantages in both directions between the old days and the new days. Back in the old days, you trying to get your stuff seen and trying to get people to notice it was you had to wear out the shoe leather. You had to go and show it to people, but at least you knew your work was then a billboard on one street. So once you met those people, it was getting seen, and there weren't that many people doing it. Now, you can do the best work that man has ever seen, but you're literally dropping it in a sea of work. And it's so difficult to get noticed, and that's why people have to turn to
it's the attention economy, isn't it? So
dial up on that. They're not just using the internet. People are having to be creative about ways that they use the internet and social media. So,
and the four of us have experienced, and everyone has experienced it online. It's so it has to become a second job at least to do all the promotion side of things, and it's a different brain as well, isn't it? Like, it's a different gear switch, and it's a lot of energy kind of consumption. Even if you're good at it or you enjoy it, and I do quite enjoy trying to come up with new ways and trying to be funny, and sometimes even succeeding. But like, it's still hard to sort of like go, okay, I'm in promo mode rather than I'm in make mode, or even that thing of like, I've made the thing, there's just nothing in the tank for today to sort of tell everyone I've made the thing, So
there's parallels with there's parallels with musicians as well, and again, because music has been devalued and is essentially free, the diminished number of artists that are still doing well tend to be those older ones with an established fan base. And certainly Andrew and Simon, you're in that. No offense, but you are experienced and you have a long career. So you've built up that, you've got the name recognition, you've got a body of work, and you'll have, and this podcast is proof of that. You have got you've got a fan base. Nick and I also, to a different extent, but we came about just in time, to not have quite that, as you said, the drop in the ocean thing to compete with. And so principally through Transformers work, we've been able to build up a body of people who generally trust what we're going to produce, and so they're there
on what we say,
really
recommending
lucky.
something or promoting something there. But it was a conversational time of social media and online connectivity, I think, when we were coming through, James, because it felt like, we were able to talk to the people who were going to ultimately buy our stuff and support our stuff. Whereas I know that, like, when you guys started, it would have been more like, obviously the turnaround between communication from your readers was a lot longer. But having said that, I think one of the skills that you have, especially Simon, is that kind of, because you've been a comic book editor, you've got that kind of editorial voice, that Carnival Barker, Stan Lee sort of thing. but you do, like, and you have to, like, I think
got to be a hype man.
Chris Ryle was really good at that as well when he was like at the start of IDW. He was really good at being the front man of the titles and of the company. I think he's a really good asset for that, and it was as that you can trust that person, you become like, I will listen to this person and what they say. But there's a good podcast. If I could recommend another podcast, it's called Making Trouble, and it's by a creator called Molly Naylor, and she's a poet, but she talks to people about the process of creativity and basically about existing in 2026. Having to make your own thing, promote your own thing, and then like how you deal with the isolation of.
That's going to get bleeps out.
I know. We're not giving Naylor any spike.
For those that can't see this visually, that
I'm telling you three about it then. Okay, so you three would enjoy it. Don't share it with those guys. But it's
absolutely. So if we can just jump back into the past for a moment, Transformers the movie, the 1986 one. Did you both see it at the cinema? Did it have that impact that it even had on me at the age I was then? And are you if you didn't see it at the cinema, are you looking forward to seeing it at the cinema this year?
Well, I was my kind of Transformers origin story is really neat in a way. So I got the Blitzwing toy in November '86. So a month later, I happened to be in the cinema to watch the movie. I don't know whether I'd have gone to watch it if I hadn't had the toy. And I went in there, I guess, with I knew enough about it to get the storyline. And then when I got the comic later on, I'll come back to the movie. But because the first comic I picked up myself was linked to events in the movie, I think that all helped. But I went with my two younger brothers, and my youngest brother is, Nick knows what I'm going to say here, 7, nearly 8 years younger than me. And he was on my lap in the movie. So my abiding memory of the movie was him urinating on my lap. I don't think it was in relation to anything on screen. I just think it was something he had to do. So that's wrapped up in my experience of it. But even as somebody that wasn't completely steeped in the lore, I could get that, all these people being killed and then, Prime himself being killed. That was a big deal.
Yeah, it was just we've definitely spoken about this on panels, I think, but it's fascinating that a big tie-in movie, what wanted to be a big tie-in movie to what was a big toy line, had all its storyline like spoiled and leaked and shared in the form of like Target 2006, for example. And I definitely spoke about this at TF UK Con recently. Like, the Target 2006 is just one of those things that just keeps on giving, because you realize it's a sequel and a prequel and a sidequel, and it's just like, it just gets richer every year. Apart from that last chapter, Simon.
Yeah,
no, I know. I agree with you, James. I'm just needling Simon because I know it's his Achilles heel. But it's I got Hot Rod as my first Transformer, and I got him in 1986. And then you get the toy, and then you open up the catalog in it, and it's like the new leaders, and it's Ultra Magnus, this Galvatron, and there's no Optimus Prime and Megatron on it, and I am just like, I am all in. I want to know who these guys are going to be. And so the comic leads into that, and so I get to see Transformers the movie. It comes out in December 1986. I get to see it in the cinema in Ireland, because that's when it came to Ireland in 1987 in October. Because that was when it was already out on VHS by then. I hadn't seen it. So I'd read the Lady Bird adaptation. I'd read the comic book adaptation. I'd read the pre-movie comics. I'd read the post-movie Wanted Galvatron comics. So I knew every bit of the story. And it did nothing to diminish just how exciting that was, and how I was coming up. It was midterm break. It was only shown for like one afternoon in Ireland, or in my small town anyway. And my mum was waiting to collect me at school, and she said, "Guess what's on in the cinema on Monday?" Because it was a bank holiday, and like it was a year since it had come out, but I knew exactly what she was talking about, and she had come to meet me to say, "You're going to see this." So it was just thrilling, and it's everything about it. Like it's the music, it's the characterization. I've talked about it before. It's the bit where Hot Rod opens the Matrix. In my head, I was like, I've never seen, and I will never see light as bright as that ever again. I'm not sure I have. Do you know? Like it's just such an experience, and kind of like the early episodes, or the pilot episodes of the cartoon, you kind of have it in your head that this is what Transformers animation is like all the time. It's as good as those first 3 episodes, and it's as good as the movie. And so while the comic is great and is my life, I wish I got to see more of the cartoon. And then
I mean, it's interesting because the movie was panned by critics who were all adults, of course. But some of the criticisms were that it was incoherent, that you couldn't differentiate between the characters. The soundtrack was too much and all that. But I was going
relentless.
It's relentless.
Complimentary.
Exactly, yeah. But you go in as a kid, and I didn't know all the ins and outs of it. But as a kid, you can follow that. That makes sense.
Of course, you can.
The music's amazing. You didn't need to understand every part of the backstory to get it. It was just frightening for adults.
Yeah, I've shown it to like my kids, and at different stages, because they're all different ages and stuff, different mothers. But it's weird. I've made sure that they watched a few episodes of the cartoon first, so that they're at least attached to Optimus Prime. Because I want them to feel how I felt, which was because I cried in the your brother wasn't the only one losing fluids.
Losing fluids.
I cried when it happened, and that's sort of like I can't believe it's happening, but because like it's a scene that's played really well. Like it's played really seriously. Peter Cullen hasn't become I am Peter Cullen doing Optimus Prime, which he has done in later years. He's acting. And not only that, robot without a face is acting. Do you know? Like,
yes,
there's they really, and they give it time as well. Do you know? They don't rush through that scene.
No,
they lots of little bits with the animation and just his eyes like flickering and kind of the effort of him talking, and it's really, really like just nicely done. There's so much care gone into the film,
and the fade to black and white is just the bit that always to me, because I thought that's kind of bold, it wasn't a little cinematic touch.
And it is proper, like he is off the table. I mean, he's on a table, but he is off the table, the fictional table.
I'll just quickly add, I will say where there is an interesting creative choice, you need at the beginning to show the threat of Unicron and what he's capable of, so that you have him devour a planet. And I get that you couldn't have him eating if you like, an Earth type planet, so it has to be robots. But that is, to the uninitiating, I can see why that would be a bit confusing, where these robots live on a metal planet, and then 2 minutes in you've got a big metal planet being obliterated. You might be thinking, I do not know what's going on, but no, very, and exceptional also, because it's the only, if the dominant strands of Transformers continuity certainly then were the comic and the cartoon, and they were opposed, as the comic was always pointing out, this was the one intersection, so as a comic, as a comic fan, it's like, no, it's legit, it's allowed.
Yeah,
it matters.
I mean, it gave us such a platform, that movie. We never looked back really after that. We never had an idea we were going to do as much with it as
Here we are,
were.
40 years later, not looking back.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we never look back.
Andrew,
So-
what did you think of it? Because you would have seen it obviously after your time working on the book, right?
No, I mean, because, oh God.
Never seen it.
Kids. So I was too old for the toys, and I was
Of course,
too old
yeah.
for the TV. So I didn't know what
So
any
was
of them
James.
were. My son did have a Optimus Prime toy, but we didn't really know what it was. We'd seen the adverts. Oh look, it's a truck and a robot. And then when I was working on Thundercats for Marvel UK, Simon saw my work and said, "Do you want to work on Transformers?" And I was like, "Yeah," because I was young and hungry, but I didn't know what it was. Well, I kind of knew what it was, but I'd had no idea of I didn't know the characters or anything
kids'
like that.
toys wouldn't have the same cultural sort of like encroachment that they would maybe on pop culture now. Like, lots of adults know what Bluey is, for example, or K-pop Demon Hunters is, but like...
Yeah, but not so much then. But
yeah.
So as reference, I was given, obviously there were all the comics that other people had drawn. That was great. And there were photocopies of character designs from the movie, I think. So I had some of those. But I was given a VHS cassette of the movie. It got a time code on it and all that kind of thing. But
cool.
popped that in and watched that, with my son, Frank. And I thought it was amazing. I was just like, yeah, I'm loving this,
So
and the voiceover by Orson Welles. What the hell's going on, So I thought it was incredible. I didn't understand much about it before I went in, but apart from certain chunks of it, for the most part, the narrative, it plays out. Like you understand what it is.
Well, hearing you tell that story makes me realize I am still reflexively defensive of the movie.
I know, same. I know.
Until you gave your verdict, and that's fine. He's on board with it. I was ready to fight. I remember when it came out on VHS. Actually, Nick, you mentioned it before, but I remember seeing it in Woolworths for $8.99, and that probably still is the most excited I've ever been by a home entertainment release. You could own it. In fact, I took photographs of my favorite. Got my mum's camera, and I'd pause the video and I'd take photos of the best bits.
I did audio recordings of it, and I did a hand-drawn version of the sound because I couldn't get the soundtrack album for love nor money. I went into the record shop every week, like once I was about 10 or 11, because I still hadn't let go of it, and trying to order the Transformers soundtrack. And so many times I would come back. I said, it's coming in, it'd be on Wednesday, and you come in on Wednesday, and they tried to sell me Transformer by Lou Reed. Like, genuinely, that happened twice.
I know. Yeah. Me too. I've been there.
Yeah.
My first trip to London was when I found the movie soundtrack on vinyl in Tower Records. And I don't know whether you've ever seen, it's a kind of Twitter meme, and it's, it's this idea of somebody that's only ever seen Boss Baby. And they see a second movie, and they're like getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes from this. Well, that's what it was like for my music collection, which consisted of one record, which was Transformers the movie. And I was so uncritically adoring of it that when I'd have friends round to play.
Oh, James. We are not so unlike you and I.
Yeah, I'm going to whack this baby on. That'll set the tone. So, let's have some Vince DiCola rocking out. So
Emma Whelan's going to love Stan Bush.
Yeah, exactly.
Christ, same. But the thing is, James, you did grow, separate from it and have an eclectic mix of music taste, and I like and work with the darkness. So one of them is more connected than the other. So it's it's true.
Back to the movie.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I think watching it more recent years. There's a couple of things I noticed. One of the things is that it feels it's almost staged a little bit like a musical, almost with the songs, because they play out in full. There's not just needle drops that you would have nowadays, which is really kind of bugged me when they want you to get the sugar rush from hearing like the Clash Train in Vain for like 30 seconds, but it's got nothing to do with the scene. Whereas the action and the emotion are almost scored to these unrelated songs really, because all these songs were were written for other reasons, and then they just scored and played out and staged to that, and then after each song finishes, it cuts straight into score. So it's like a whole suite, and it's just sort of
you forget now, because actually it's come back into fashion now. Obviously, as you were saying before, children's properties, IP from the 80s, it's a big thing, and so you'll get He-Man movies and the rest, and they're full-blown multi-million-pound products. But there was that window in the 80s where you had the Transformers movie, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, and you would have big name voice actors, and you'd have to think there'd be a score, a dedicated score, and soundtrack, and and they all failed at the cinema, so that kind of didn't have any of that for a bit more.
They would have been chasing that dollar that like movie soundtracks really had in the 80s, though, because it was like you weren't a movie unless you had a hit song, and even like crap films had hit songs, so it's you'll remember a song like a Phil Collins, like Against All Odds is from a film, but I can't remember what film it is, but it's a bit, and so the soundtracks were like, they're obviously chasing that sort of synergy of like, we want Stan Bush at the top of the charts where he belongs. But the other thing I've noticed from watching it in recent years, and I always quiver when I talk about it. So like as a kid, I obviously associated like with Hot Rod, and because he's like he's the kid, and he's got flames on his chest, and he's all the cool things, and he's the one, and like no one understands him, and he's just wants to be a young punk, and he gets to be the chosen one at the end. But now, and it's from a voice acting point of view as well, the character like really like relate to his Cup, like, and he's a character that's so invested in Hot Rod all the way through. And he really like is looking out for him. And he's grouchy sod. And as a kid, you're reading that as like, why is this sod being such a dick to Hot Rod the whole time? Why don't we just let him be cool?
Yeah, no. If I was your therapist, if I watched the movie, all of my questions.
Oh, there's no question about me that cannot be answered by this film. And now, like so like I cried as a kid at Hot Rod or at Optimus Prime dying. But now the bit that properly gets me teared up is the bit where Cup says,
"I knew it." Go on.
And he says, "I knew you had potential, lad," and that just absolutely like Lionel Stander didn't care when he was recording that line. The writer definitely didn't, and it's just. But I think that's a relationship that you can only get if you've grown up with the film as well. Do you know? Like I think no one's like I think a 40-something-year-old person watching that film now for the first time is not going to go, "Yeah, that really read." They'll get it, but they won't get it the same way. I think that transition of being the kid who's in the Transformers and now being the dad who's in the Transformers is something I never kind of saw coming. So I'm looking forward to being the Planet Eater.
So Andrew, Simon, I think we've proven that you don't need to worry about us running out of things to say.
No. But that's perfect. It's always. I mean, it's a bit like when just Andrew and I are on. You never know where the conversation's going to lead. And I'm
so lonely, guys.
It's normally to Nick crying. That's where it leads.
But if we can just move on a little bit from the movie.
Sure, it's fine. I'm going to be okay.
The world's most vulnerable man. Compliment.
So let's talk about the period after Transformers, or the in-between years. Mm-hmm. Now, I happen to have read James's wonderful Generation Mech, and that is utterly wonderful in so many ways, because there was so much I didn't realise. I didn't realise what a proliferation of fanfic, fan communities there were during those, from the 80s right up to the noughties. And, I just want to know what your roots were through that fanfic, fan community route to turning pro, really.
Well, I may have been late to the party in terms of the actual franchise, but I was pretty early when it came to the kind of fan community. So obviously, once I started reading the UK comic, I was committed to the very end. That would always be the case. And uniquely for any comic, particularly a British comic, the readers knew that its days were numbered, right? So normally with children's comics, particularly in the 60s, 70s, you'd get kind of great news inside, or great news for all readers. And it would be, oh, your comic's dying, but hey, 12% of it will exist in another comic for 6 months, and then
That's
will
what
go.
this episode of the podcast is. It's like, great news, readers. We're merging with Nick and James's podcast.
But because Transformers UK readers had grown up with the comic, or a lot of them had, and that's what ensured its longevity. As they got older, they understood that we were reprinting American stuff, and someone did the maths and wrote in and said, "Well, look, the American comic's finished now, so I reckon you'll be done by whatever." And the editorial said, "Yeah, well, we've got enough material to last till around 330, 332. Who knows what will happen next?" And so the readers knew that the end was near. And running parallel with that, there was a few American fan clubs, but there was one in particular that had grown its network through the letters page in the American comic. Because back then, controversially, Marvel and DC would print the entire address of the correspondence. So what's the worst that can happen? And so people could write to each other, And through that, the fans had made contact, and this kind of, I guess, pen pal network had sprung up. Long story short, they ended up calling themselves Transmasters. A couple of letters from the Transmasters secretary essentially appeared in the UK comic with an address and saying, if you want to find out more, write. So people like me did that, discovered this whole other world, which was amazing. Because bear in mind, at that point, when you're getting older, you're 14, 15, 16, and you think you're the only... It's a failing franchise. It's probably going to go forever. And you're an old, as Nick was saying before, I was far too old for it, you think. So to find other people your age that still like it is great. Anyway, that led to fanzines and fan fiction and stuff, and the joy of being able to share what you enjoyed with other people, having an audience for those school jotter fan fictions that I did. So that was, that. Again, long story short, that's how Nick and I eventually came to know each other through the UK branch of that fan club, Nick? And actually, we never collaborated while members of the club. Yeah,
barely did professionally, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the festering animosity held us back, but we managed to overcome that.
Sexual tension, though.
We'll come back to most of that, not that bit. But yeah, that's a kind of very potted history of the scene. I'm conscious of the time. So Nick, you can say how
don't hand over to me, whatever you do, because I'll. But half jokingly, when I sort of said I'm so lonely, I was in the mid '90s when we had no internet, and I still liked these things that were deeply uncool and also weren't really. There wasn't any new kind of material out for me to kind of relate to and stuff. And that kind of coincided with me kind of moving on to things like Jim Lee's X-Men and the 90s comics boom and taking it more seriously that I want to be a comics artist in general. But it was through those kind of like letters pages that I kind of felt became connected again and developed like pen pals. And then it was just the new media. It was all those new discoveries of like, did you know that there was a Japanese Transformers TV shows continued, and it was during the manga boom or the anime boom. So you kind of thought, well, these are going to be amazing, these lost Transformers shows. And they weren't amazing, but some of them were good. And it's that rediscovery of all this lost lore. And it was like all these like ships that had sort of been scattered to the galaxy, all be kind of coming back together and like, following like a beacon of these like fan clubs and fanzines. And it really like mattered to me, like getting those like letters and packages. During
when you're
no, you go ahead. Yeah, I'm done.
Well, I was going to. I was probably going to say something similar. It did feel like a lifeline, and you'd look forward to getting something in the post. But I was going to say when you're older and a decade passes in the blink of an eye, especially your 40s, I will say. Compare that to when you're younger and you experience life a lot more slowly. So in the 91, 92, 93, it did feel as if Transformers was dead, even though when you look back, at a distance, it was only really in America, only 18 months or so before.
I think when you said that to me, it kind of blew my mind, James, when you kind of like laid that out. Those figures.
When you were there in the middle of it. And the other, I think, interesting defining characteristic of the UK branch of Transmasters was that everyone kind of resolved at the beginning to collaborate. Yes, you do your own strips or your own prose stories. Sometimes you'd work together, but you'd write things that would slot into everything else. And it wasn't until later on I realised that's quite an unusual thing to do in the world of fan fiction and fandom generally to resolve to really work together, and that was because of the UK comic.
So like, and it was because we wanted to make, and like the guys ahead of that, like Matt Dallas especially, that like to us and to them, Transformers was the UK comic, which is also the US comic. You know, the UK comic was obviously both, and the movie. So yeah, so that's if we want to make a Transformers comic, that's Transformers. So why wouldn't we like, it's so rich, it's such a good, and like we've all done it now where we've worked on official stuff where you're kind of following on or trying to slot in, you know, from pre-existing setup or continuity, and how kind of rewarding and how kind of satisfying that could be. Obviously it's great to create things whole scale and to kind of feel you've got free reign, but it's a nice test of like discipline and building of your discipline, I think, to kind of work within those confines.
It really did help build those kind of muscles up in terms of storytelling and things. The other interesting thing that I came to realize in writing the book Generation Mechs was that that ours really was the last, I guess everyone says this in a way, but I think ours was the last generation of fans whose experience would take that shape, because halfway into the 90s, certainly by the end of the 90s, the internet was there. Fandom was more diffuse, and the days of kind of at what I called analog fandom, hard copy fanzines, photocopying them, distributing them, writing letters, that would gone. And when I looked into essentially the history of fandoms, you had that groundswell of productivity in the 60s and 70s, with mainly American women actually writing genre fanfic about Star Trek and Doctor Who and Blake Seven and Starsky and Hutch, and it was in that kind of era that the origins of Transmasters came about, and they carried over into the 90s by the by the end of the 90s, because of the internet, and in our case because of Beast Wars, because of other things happening. And Matt Dallas, you mentioned him before, he would produce the main comic that the UK fandom coalesced around, and everyone's lives started to intrude. We had kids and jobs and other commitments, but Matt said, well, Transformers was coming back by that point. You had the first wave of the kind of the 80s nostalgia boom was bearing fruit. The Titan books, the reprints were coming out. There was talk of a new comic, and so that gap had been bridged, with the fan club.
Apparently, reading your book, I know I owe Matt an apology because I didn't mention him in the Ultimate Guide when I did my little piece on fanzines and the continuation of the G2 story. So, Matt, if you're listening to this, all credit to you on these.
Oh,
now I'm going to cry.
That's very heartwarming. The Ultimate Guide was where my first work was published. One as a G2 picture that I did for the Transmasters UK, and that was a huge deal because it was like an official Transformers kind of publication. It was you had written it, and it was available in the same bookshop that I used to get the Transformers comics.
It's amazing.
And so it really felt like I was one step closer. And one of those sort of things, I'm sure we've all had it, where you're sort of like, look, if this is it, I can live with it. Do you know what I mean? I can say that I was in a book that Simon had written and stuff.
I'm gonna knit our stories together. I'm gonna say a few things. So, firstly, Simon being the writer in Transformers UK, that was the first time I paid attention to the credits, and I realized that there was real people producing things, because I used to get Buster and Whoopi and stuff, and they weren't credited. So I thought, there's real people creating this stuff, and I'd have that name recognition, which is why I'd get Dragon's Claws and Death's Head and so on. And with respect to Andrew, I would say that every reader of the comic had their ranked artists, right? And they'd be the kind of top of the table ones, and you knew when it was an issue with that art, and great, guaranteed good time. And I'm taking a risk here in terms of who else you might interview in the years to come, or who I might bump into at conventions. But personally, Andrew's arrival, that was the final, that was the last time a big classic Transformers artist appeared on the scene. No disrespect to the people that came after, but you had
made it his own as well. Made it
absolutely,
your own. Andrew. Sorry, you were here. But like,
R.I.P. Andrew.
Do you remember that guy? But it also contributed to that sort of maturity, I think, that the Transformers comics had in the end, because like, you came in and you weren't a fan, obviously, because why would you be? But you're just doing your job, officer. But like you, like the storytelling in those last issues, like the panel work and like just the figure work and the character work, and you're one of those artists as well that sort of like, it's one of those, I talk about them a lot, but those artists that give you permission to do something where they kind of switch your brain chemistry, and you're like, you can draw them like this. and really.
Well, that first page of Cold Comfort and Joy, with Power Master Crime, that was I could okay, someone's making a big arrival here.
For sure. That is true. I remember that being a real sense of like safe hands.
And also, I would say that I'd also say that for some reason the transformation page announced the arrival of your, I presume, first child, Andrew. I don't know if you remember that, but they didn't mention him by name. But
transformation.
Wow.
And that again, the intro blurb. Congratulations to Andrew. And that's when I realised that the people creating the comics had lives as well. They didn't just
and were capable of breeding. Yeah.
Exhausting.
I mean, when I arrived into Transformers, because like I said, unlike you guys, I didn't really know what it was. The first thing that was apparent to me was, that I've got to draw robots. I don't want to draw robots. I want to draw superheroes. But then the other thing was that when I was shown what other people are doing, it's like, well, there's no continuity here. Like everything looks different because the styles were completely different. So it was like, okay, well, I'll just draw the way I know how to draw. So I fused them with character purely because I wanted to draw people. So the poses and everything were very, very human. The storytelling, I don't know. I just picked it up from reading comics, in terms of panel layouts. It's all John Buscema for me. I mean,
I've heard you mention that before. It's interesting. And when you kind of hear something like that, then you start noticing. You're like, of course it was, But it's because I'd seen your stuff on Ghostbusters and Thundercats before, and I really enjoyed kind of the cartooniness of your work because you were kind of good at that and being able to push proportions and push expressions, and that was like really strong at Ghostbusters. So I really liked how you drew people before I knew your Transformers stuff.
They were too cartoony, though. I mean, I did the Ghostbusters stuff because, I mean, it was a cartoon, wasn't it? But, two things. One, it was a cartoon, so they looked cartoony. The other thing was I wasn't that good at drawing humans at that point. Like anatomy, yes. Faces, no. I look back embarrassed at.
You drew like lots of kind of good, like the kind of demons and sort of kind of goblin-y sort of kind of creatures in Ghostbusters, and I thought you did the stuff that I hadn't seen any of the other artists kind of do there. That they were just a bit more creative and maybe a little bit more influenced by like animation and animation design. It felt like, but there was definitely you seem to kind of enjoy when you got to do like grotesque sort of stuff in Ghostbusters. I seem to
because you can play around with that.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit conscious of time and keeping everybody on here. So very quickly, would you both, Nick and James, give us your first pro work, how that came to be on Transformers, and then I want you to plug anything you wish to plug that you're currently working on or is just out there.
Sure.
Right. Okay. Well, I suppose chronologically, I started doing Transformers professionally before James by a couple of years. So it's my 21 years in the business now this year. So I started in 2005 doing some cover work for IDW and doing some of the kind of letters page artwork. But like in the preceding times to that, I had the misfortune to meet you and Andrew, both of you, at different kind of conventions. And I remember there being like one signing you guys were doing in like a college in Cork in Ireland, which is a long way from I live in the southeast. And I somehow found out that you guys were going to be there. And I remember like busting out like 2 pages. I think the Dreamwave was up and running at this stage. It's pre-IDW. But I brought like a portfolio down and I got like a really like lovely feedback like from both of you. And it was that sort of thing of like, Andrew, you were like really helpfully critical about it. You were sort of like, I remember you sort of saying some of the stuff I did was sort of like your expressions are really good and really, really strong, but you're giving yourself nowhere to go. You're like, if the expressions are so wild all the time and so extreme all the time, you're going to need to sort of be, where do you go if something exciting happens, And I remember going, okay, all right. So actually, so that was, you told me to calm down basically, Andrew.
Probably not the first time you ever heard that.
Did you ever listen to
him? Who? So I like through like meeting you guys and having feedback, like you were aware of me as an entity and stuff, but also it helped me be aware of like myself and the work and what I needed to do. So I had a new set of samples ready for when IDW got the license in 2005. A friend kindly passed my details on, and so I started to do cover work then through 2005, 2006, and then like I don't know what month it kind of came out, but I think it was September maybe that the Spotlight Shockwave came out. which was my first professional Transformers Interiors comics. And we've spoken about it a lot, Simon, about how weirdly lightning seemed to strike. It's a sort of comic that you kind of is now 20 years in our past, and I'm still as proud of it and as happy with it. And I kind of look at it and go, don't think I could have done much better. There's definitely stuff after that where I'm gone, I wish I had another go at that one. But there was just something about it. The script was great. It's a Shockwave versus the Dinobots, and it really happened to be, the story happened to be just a linchpin of the IDW universe anyway. So it was a single issue that gets, re-looked at and relitigated often. And I was just in Sweden a few weeks ago for the reprint in Swedish with Addis Media of the Spotlight collection in like a gorgeous edition.
Right.
They managed to get like material that has never been available, that obviously they got from like the divorce from IDW, where they have all like my sketches, my pencils, my pre-inked pencils that I never shared online. So it's so interesting they got that from the server, and they've got like So I recommend that to anyone a fan of the Spotlights. They're available currently in Swedish in oversized, beautifully produced editions. But that was it, and that was again a dream come true, because it was me, you, Josh Bircham, who I'd worked with in a fan capacity online. He's a colorist, a very young colorist at the stage, and he's still younger than me now. But he just nailed it, and just really, really lucky. And it was one of those moments where it was like I'm getting to work on my favorite comic. I'm getting to work with my favorite writer. I'm getting to work with the colorist that I've wanted to work with professionally as our first go round. If this is it, then I can die happy. And so it was it's literally been downhill since that. I've literally had to reevaluate everything since then, because I know Transformers isn't like where a lot of comic creators want to end up, but it was for me. And I kind of had to sort of go, okay, well, now what next? So I'm a very, very lucky boy.
I mean, it's interesting, Spotlight Shockwave, because it was both the most wonderful thing and not so good, because we set the bar very high with the very first Spotlight we did, that I'd never felt any of my subsequent Spotlights quite measured up to that one. So there you go. Now, James, your pro work.
I got a soft spot for Nightbeat Spotlight. I think it's very good. They're all very good. So I mentioned the fan club before, and see, Nick left his mark on the fan club art wise, and then went off to pursue becoming a pro. And I kind of stuck around a bit longer. I started scripting comics for the club and for Matt Dallas, and in the background I was kind of developing the writing, the prose writing, and I ended up self-publishing a not-for-profit Transformers novel called Eugenesis, which was huge. I don't know, a couple of 100,000 words, whatever. It was made up to look like a kind of a Penguin classic deliberately. And I sold that at my first Transformers convention in 2001, which is where I met you, Simon, for the first time. I don't think you were at that one, Andrew. I think I didn't meet you for a few years after that, at maybe at Auto Assembly.
Andrew might have been at that one.
At that one, I know Lee Sullivan was there.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. But it was where you and I first met as well, wasn't it, James?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so it's kind of a nexus point, really. And actually, incidentally, before I published, maybe before or after, when I was trying to promote Eugenesis, one of the organisers of the convention sent a sample to you, Simon, and I was hoping I could get like a blurb for the front page, and you sent, and this is entirely understandable because it was unofficial, so you declined, but you did say nice things about it, and which I heard kind of secondhand, so that was encouraging. But then I felt I'd done my bit. There wasn't really anywhere to go fanfic wise, so I kind of stepped away from Transformers a bit. I was out the loop in terms of the comics until Nick. We were friends, we'd remained friends, and Nick got his break with IDW, so that kind of renewed my interest. I will say very quickly, as a kind of sidebar, when I was going back to say 10 years, when I was about 14 or 15, I wrote to Simon. I wrote a bona fide fan letter to Simon, and I can't remember if it was before. I think it was after the comic had ended in the Wilderness years, and I didn't know where, despite my best efforts, where he lived. So I sent it. I must have sent it care of Marvel's UK offices or something, and didn't get a reply. But he's made up for it since.
You get your own back now, James, by not replying to emails too. So it's
Jeff Senior replied, but that's different.
He's functionally illiterate.
Anyway, I digress. But Simon did sign issue 75 of the US comic. I sent it to Final Frontier, I think it was, or wherever. And I said, with a stamped addressed envelope, because that's what you had to do back in the day. And I said, can you ask Simon to sign this and send it back to me? And if you do, I'll buy something from your shop. And that did come back to me. And Simon, you signed it 10 years later and 10 years after that. So in 2031, we got to do it again. Anyway,
that's so cool.
Okay. So I might still be alive then.
You better be. So anyway, so Nick had got some work with IDW, and he put in a good word for me, which led to some pitches which went nowhere. Nick and I worked on an Octane spotlight together, and in fact, I'm working on something else, Nick, and I saw the Dinobots pitch that we'd made, the origin of the Dinobots, which I now know came closest to going somewhere. Anyway, it didn't, and it was when Nick was commissioned to do Last Stand of the Wreckers. That was kind of my way. I think I even sent a copy of Eugenesis to Andy Schmidt at IDW. Anyway, all those things kind of led to an opportunity to co-write Wreckers with Mr. Roche, and the rest is history.
Excellent. Well, look, let's just wrap up a little bit here, because we've kept you long enough.
And nowhere else to go.
Just tell us what you're working on now. What other things, other projects, anything of your own creator-owned stuff out there? Just let us know.
Should I go for? Okay, so only because you mentioned it already, which is lovely. So Generation Mechs, which is a history of Transformers fan culture. It's principally in the 90s, but it does start earlier than that. And it's a lot of fanzine stuff, but also fan conventions, kind of the birth of the migration of the fandom online, interviews with Simon and with Hasbro executives and fanzine creators, and just tries to capture that is, what would otherwise be a kind of increasingly vanishing past. So that's, I have got copies of that left. And if I may, so people who are interested can email mtmte.books@gmail.com. And then I'm working on a companion edition, like a coffee table book, which is a celebration of fanzines and kind of print, ephemera for next year. And then at the moment, some people may know that I do kind of annotated versions of the More Than Meets the Eye scripts in increasingly kind of lavishly produced packages. And so there's a new clutch of those coming out in the next few months.
Right, and if I can just say, Generation Mechs, I thoroughly recommend.
Yeah, it is.
It's just incredibly in depth.
Yeah, I haven't gotten through all mine, but it is. Like I said, it's forensic. If you've read James's work on the Classics UK, the Marvel Classics UK stuff, there you go. And and he's got a good eye for the old production. I've got to say, there's quality control with Roberts that you cannot beat. But it's but again, it's also easy to read. It's like James is again talking about him in the past tense, like he's. It's not like just like a listicle or anything like that. It's got a proper kind of arc and like shape to it. I imagine. I haven't got through it all yet.
If he had to go out, it was good. It was on that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's even available out there in libraries as well. Certain libraries. So people. Various institutions have got in touch because it's a kind of
genuinely give the man some money for his work. At the moment, I am working on Masters of the Universe Genesis. Which is like a series. It's basically the spotlights of the He-Man universe. They're doing like sort of a character kind of like series, like so mini arcs. So I'm doing like 3-issue Man-at-Arms kind of origin. So following a side quest that he had with Adam's father Randor when they were both younger men. If you can imagine Brokeback, it's a different sort of thing, but it's a lot of fun. It's lots of muscly boys and big swords, and it's so much fun. I'd forgotten how much I loved He-Man and Masters of the Universe from drawing this, and then seeing the movie is just absolutely sort of like sent me spiraling in fandom again. I've also done some work I've done a cover for a 2000 AD thing that's going to be coming out much later in the year. I've been doing covers for Blood and Thunder. They're still coming out at the moment too. I'm doing a project with Simon that will hopefully be out by the end of the summer.
Yes.
So and then Apart from that, yeah, I'm still working on creator-owned stuff. That who knows how that'll be going by the time you hear this. But I can be found on my stuff can be found on nickrocheart.bigcartel.com. You can find my art book featuring artwork from commissions and conventions I've been doing over the last few years. I'll be selling a second volume of that, a whole new one, at this year's TF Nation as well as the old one. So there's plenty of chances to come and buy my nonsense.
Yeah, and we'll put these links in on the page, so
yeah.
you
And actually,
can find
if, just in case there's some people who watch this who haven't heard, I did a graphic novel a few years ago called Scarenthood, and it's about a group of parents that go ghost hunting while their kids are in play school, but they've got to be back by lunchtime to pick up the kids. So it's kind of like the Goonies grown up, but with like mortgages and panic attacks. So it's like Irish folklore. It's very sweary. It's very funny, and you can currently get that on my Big Cartel, nickrocheart.bigcartel. You get it sketched as well and sent out to you, and very, very proud of that, and hopefully more of that soon as well. So that's
very recommended.
And again, yes, highly recommended.
Thanks,
it's a
guys.
great read.
Thank you, guys.
Right, well, look, thank you very much. Wow, this is a Titanic podcast. I should have known when we had Nick on, really.
I'm a man with very little to say, but I will spend a long time saying it.
But thank you very much, both of you, James and Nick, for coming and helping us celebrate our 50th The Rest is Giant Robots.
This was lovely, and I just need to say, but for everyone, like we owe you both everything, I think.
Yeah.
So
both of you, huge. Well, there's lots of reasons why we wouldn't be here, literally and in other senses.
And we were both texting each other yesterday, genuinely giddy about the fact that you picked us to do this. So we're touched and honored, and we love you guys very much. So
we're still your fanboys.
We're still your fanboys.
Oh, fantastic! Great stuff. Thank you very much, Andrew. Anything to add?
No, it was amazing. Really, really amazing. I thought we were almost going to get two pods out of that one. No, it's good.
It's good. It's good. It's a double-sized issue, isn't it?
You could call it that.
Enter the competition in the back, kids.
Brilliant. Look, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you again, Nick and James.
Yeah.
And we will see you for a slightly more regular-sized podcast in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, we will do. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. See you soon. Bye. Thank you for listening to The Rest is Giant Robots. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider subscribing for more and maybe share with like-minded friends. This has been a Wildfur production.